This is Gemara in Gittin and Daf Lamed Aleph, Baruch Hashem, another exciting day. As we wrap up the third parak here in Gittin, we pick it up on Lamed Aleph, Amid Aleph, from the Mishnah. Says the Mishnah, Aminiach, a peiros, if someone leaves over peiros, and we're continuing the discussion when we rely upon the chazakah, the presumption, the assumption that was continues. So if someone sets aside a fruit, aliyos mafresh aleihen, truma umaisrais, he sets aside produce that this is what he's going to use to give the trumais to maisrais, ma'is, or he sets aside money, which are for what? Liyos mafresh aleihen maisrani, to give to the maisrani. You know, the original donor's card, he pre-gives, and he takes the items, he puts them on the side, and this is where I'm eventually going to give my chuma from, I'm eventually going to give my meiser from, I'm eventually going to give my tzedakah from. It's all sitting there and waiting there. What's the halacha? Mafresh aleihem, he could separate with them, b'cheskas shehein kayamim, assuming they are still around. Now what exactly does this mean? So let's just see Rashi, who explains this. Says Rashi, Soymech al elu v'achal tevelim acherim sheyesh loi v'oimer. What does he say? Ari trumasan ba'oisen peirish eksisi. The truma is that which I already separated and set aside. Ulekach v'chein oisen tamid. Meaning, he sits down to a meal and he has a salad or he has an apple, and this apple is tevel. This apple did not have the appropriate trumas that meiser is taking off. So what does he do? He says that I have in my house, I have a big barrel of produce that I'm eventually going to give to the kohen. And that is now what's going to allow me to eat this apple right now. The question is, when he sits down to this apple, when he sits down to this food, he doesn't know 100% that the produce is still there. So is he allowed to continue eating with the assumption that the produce is still existent? Says the Mishnah, yes. Im avdu, if lamaisa gets lost. So now the question is, he comes home one day and he goes check the cabinet that he has these apples that he gives to the kohen, the levi, the ani, etc. And he sees they're all spoiled. So now, how long? When does he have to assume they became spoiled? Meaning, when back in time does he have to assume there was an issue that which he did? So im avdu, the halacha is, it says the Mishnah, hariza chayshesh mi'es le'es. He has to worry backwards from es le'es, which is a 24-hour time period, divrei Rav Elazar, that he suspects backwards. So he thinks back, okay, yesterday I had an apple, the day before I had a cucumber, and he goes backwards, and all the items within the last 24 hours are a problem. Rav Yehuda Omer says, Rav Yehuda, b'shleisha parakim boitkin yayin. There are 3 times it teaches Rav Yehuda that you have to check the wine, and as Rashi points out, what are we checking the wine for? To make sure that the wine did not turn to vinegar. What are the 3 times? B'kidim shal moitzai chag, at the time of the when the wind blows before Sukkot, baitzas samadar, when the smadar, which is the budding berries, emerge, b'shas kinisas mayim bebaisar, and when the liquid enters into the unripe dates. So 3 times you have an obligation to check the wine. So really we're going to have 2 parts of today's shir. Part A is we're going to deal with the first part of the Mishnah, which is going to be that you could assume that everything is good. When you realize it's not good, how far backwards you have to be suspectful for it, part A. And part B is we're going to go on a Haggadah engine, dealing with different times we have to check the fruits, learning about different winds, etc. So we begin, says the Gemara on the bottom of Lamed Aleph, Amid Aleph, my le'es le'es. Rav Yechon Amar, me'es le'es shel bidika. Today I checked and I saw that my fruit was no good. So 24 hours prior from this bidika. Rav Elazar ben Antignis, Aimer Misham Rav Elazar, B'Rav Yanai, as we turn over to Lamed Aleph, Amid Beis, Me'ez le'ez shel hanacha. The 24 hours of the original leaving of the produce, which of course is a much larger issue. Which means for the first 24 hours I can assume it was good. Now, 24 hours later, now, after that 24 hours, as long as it's been a week, a day, a month, we assume it's not been good. Says the Gemara Tanan, we learned in our Mishnah. Im Avdu, this is our Mishnah. If they got lost, what's the halacha? So says Mar. That sounds exactly like the Mishnah says. Shouldn't say from Eis Leis in the Mishnah. Should say backwards from the original time Eis Leis. Says the Gemara, that's a very good question. Kasha. We continue that different Rav Elazar, these words of Rav Elazar. Amar Rav Elazar says Rav Elazar. Chalukin alav chavirav al Rav Elazar. The friends, the other Chachamim arguing Rav Elazar to Tinan. Mikvah shenadat v'nimsa chaser. And of course, a similar case, you go to a mikvah one day and you do your casual checks, making sure the mikvah is kosher. And you see, guess what? It's chaser. Doesn't have the requisite 40 saw. The halacha is, says the Mishnah in mikvahis as well as kedushin and nida, called to hayrois shenasa al gabov. Anything that went into this mikvah lima freya, moving backwards, bein b'rshus hayachid, bein b'rshus harabim, tameos. They are tamei. Says the Gemara, pshita de chalukin. Of course they argue. On this Mishnah we see nothing about 24 hours. It says kol tayros, everything. Explains the Gemara, you're right. You know what the thought process was? My lima freya, may eis leis. Maybe when this Mishnah said that backwards it's assumed to be Tami Lemafreya, maybe what that meant was Leis Leis. Kamashlan, no, that it's arguing on our Mishnah. Continues the Gemara, Rav Yudam Rabbi Gol Parakim, Tana. We learned in our Mishnah, B'kidum Shal Moitzai Chag. We learned in our Mishnah, B'kidum, at the onset, when the time of the east wind blows, right before Sukkot, Shal Moitzai Chag, Shel Tekuf of the new season. Tani, we learned to the right of Yudaimer. Begim al Prakim. Mamoichrin has that 3 times we sell grain. Lifnei hazera, before the zera, before the planting, which has a zera during the planting. Ubi prois Pesach, at the onset of Pesach. Ushloisha Prakim, Moichrin is a yayin. That's when you sell the grains, and 3 times you sell wine. Beprois Pesach, at the onset of Pesach. Beprois Zeres, onset of Shavuos, beprois Chag, and the onset of Sukkot. Now the price continues. Uvishloisha v'shemen. And when do we sell oil? Me'atzeres ve'elach. And oil sold from Shavuos and onward. So beautiful, different times that you sell different products. Says the Gemara, the obvious kasha, Lamai Hilchasa, who cares? You can sell whatever you want. What do you mean that there's 3 times you sell something? Amar Rava, no, v'temer ababa l'shotfin. So it means in a case of shotfin, if someone has a partnership, at these 3 intervals, you're allowed to sell without confirming with your partner that he's happy with the sale. Mikan ve'elach mai, from this moment and onward, what is the halacha? Says the Gemara, Amar Rava, kol yoma pirkahu. Every day is considered to be its time, and therefore these are start dates, these 3 times, and from them and onward. So once we mentioned the east wind in our Mishnah, which was the time to check the wine, says the Gemara, Vikizrach HaShemesh, and it was when the sun rose, Hashem prepared a strong east wind. My charishes, what does it mean? Charishes, Amar Rav Yehuda B'Shah, Shemin HaShaves, when this wind blows, also tlamin bayam, it makes tlamin, which is a similar word of charisha, is furrows in the ocean. Amalei Rabbi Yachi, if that's true, I need to say v'tach Hashemesh al roish Yonah vayis alef, and the sun beat down on the head of Yonah and he turns faint. How could that be? This seems to say that the wind caused it to be very hot, not that it caused it to be stormy at sea, different waves. Such a strong wind that what does it do? It stopped all the winds in front of it, and that's why the default of when there are no winds, then it turns very hot. And that is the meaning of the pasuk. The garments are warm when the earth is quiet. Bishaket, from the word of sheket, when the earth is quiet over the south wind. When is your clothing warm? Bisha, At this time, Shayishkid Eretz Midara Oim, when there's no more of this south wind, Shabishashim and Hashavis, because the time that the south wind blows, Mishtakekes Kola Ruches Mibaret stops all the winds in front of it, and thereby causes it to be very hot. Rav Huna Rav Chisda Yasvi, they were going Cholav Azal Givina Alayu Geniva of the first parak fame. Geniva, as we saw, Taimim Alai, he was being harassed. And he wanted to know how to take care of them. So Geniva passed by Alai. So we have Rav Huna and Rav Chisda, and Geniva passes by. So Rav Huna and Rav Chisda turn to each other and say, hey, we should stand up for Geniva. Tavar Rayanu, because he is a Talmud Chacham. The other one responds, Malki Palga Nekum. We should stand up for this man who causes fights. As they're trying to figure out whether they should stand up, so Geniva comes over to them. What are you guys talking about? Amrulay, they respond, Baruch, as we're talking about the singing of winds. He teaches, repeats a statement of Rachanan Barav in the name of Rav. Dalit Aruchas, there are 4 winds, Minashvais B'chol Yoim, that blow each and every day. Ruach Sefainis, and the northern wind, Minasheves, Imkulan, blows with all of them. Shel Malekain, if not for this, Eina Oilam Miskayim, Afilu Sha'achas, V'ruach Deroimis is Kasha Mikulan, the southern wind is the harshest of all of them. V'lmali Benat Ma'amida Mecharvas Kolo Oilam. If not for the Benat, an angel, a malach, that stops the winds, if not for him, the whole world will be destroyed from this southern wind. Shenamar, as the pasuk says, "Hami binascha yaver neitz yifroish kinafav l'seimam." That the neitz, referring to this ben neitz, extends its limbs and blocks the southern wind. If not, the world would be destroyed. Says the Gemara, Rava Rav Nachman bar Yitzchak Aviyasi Avechalav Azel Rav Nachman bar Yaakov. So Rav Nachman bar Yaakov passes by Yaseh Begur Haka. Rav Nachman bar Yaakov is sitting on a silver chariot. A golden Gorhak is the chariot, the Dava cold. Uparis Alayu Sorbala, and it spread over them Sorbala de Karsi, a bluish greenish coat, really dressed as royalty. Rava Azli Gabe. So Rava goes out to greet this Chasha person in this incredible chariot dressed so beautifully. And Rav Nachman Yitzchak Azli Gabe. Amar Rav Nachman Yitzchak says, Dilma mi inshi devirish kalusa inuah. This sounds like it's owned for the government from the Reish Kalusa. Rava Tzarachlu. Rava needs to make, has to make nice with the government. And I said Rav Nachman Yitzchak, I don't need to, and therefore he does not approach the caravan. When Rav Nachman Yitzchak sees, when Rav Nachman Yitzchak sees that was really Rav Nachman bar Yaakov, so he goes to greet him, and Golu the Dari of Nachman bar Yaakov's sleeves are rolled up. You see his arm, Amar, and he says, Shadye Nashev, that this carriage where he's sitting, this golden carriage is being blown by the hot wind. That's why his sleeves are rolled up. Again, this whole story just to show the power of the winds. Says the Gemara, Amar Rava, were 7 lines of the wide lines on Lamed Alpha Mebei, Zachi Amar Rav, Isha Ma Pelis, by this eastern wind caused a woman to miscarriage. Even a pearl in the sea rots due to this eastern wind. Even the sperm inside the woman's body putrefies due to this eastern wind. And these 3 things that happens from the eastern wind are all learned out from one pasuk. The pasuk says, Kihu bein achem yafriya Yavai kadim ruach Hashem yivider oilav yavaish mi kairai. So the Gemara darshins on the first wide line, Yavosh mi kairai. What does the pasuk mean when it says that the spring is going to become dry? Zumakar shalish refers to the makar, the private areas of a woman, meaning that she's going to miscarriage. What does that mean? So that's the semen inside the woman's body. It's going to putrefy. That is the pearls at the sea, that even they will turn rotten. Amar Rava, Eidei Suryahu. This comes to the Chacham of Surya, the Daiki Koror. They were very precise in Psukim. My Kihu Bein Achim Yafriya. What does the pasuk mean when it says that he's going to be fruitful amongst everyone else. Amar Rava, this means that afilu, even as we turn over to Lamed Beis Amid Aleph, afilu shufta bekufina, how strong are these eastern winds that even the handle, which is inserted demara, the handle of the shovel, rafia, the handle itself turns loose from the eastern wind blowing. And Rav Yosef Amar says, Rav Yosef, afilu sichta bedafna rafia, even a peg in the wall becomes loose. And finally, Rav Yaakov, afilu kanya bekufta rafia, even a reed woven into a basket becomes loose, all due to this eastern wind. Hadran Allah kol agad. We should do an incredible chazara of this third parak, and we'll dive into the fourth parak, V'siyata D'Shmaya, in the next shir.